Hey everyone, as you start coming on in, it is Nat-C Tuesday. Um, and it's Nick Pero and Lisa Joy bringing on our friend and first time guest with us on the Nat-C series, Tim Whitaker. Um, so welcome, Tim. Do you mind introducing yourself before I tell everyone my fun term that I have decided upon that I
Oh
hope
no, not
can
another
be?
one.
No, it's not a mean one. It's not a mean term. I'm not being mean this time. I think it's an encompassing term.
Okay.
So Tim, welcome. It's good to see you again from last week. And do you mind introducing yourself for everyone?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Tim Whitaker. I founded an organization called the New Evangelicals that helps people find a better path forward in their faith away from Christian nationalism. And I'm also someone who makes content on my personal Substack at Tim Whitaker Speaks and Instagram. I host several podcasts, so I'm in the content creator space. And I'm also someone who does their best to understand the world of Christian nationalism, both on an experiential level, because I grew up in it, and also trying to interpret the world of academics and how we relate it to, someone like me who's very much a lay audience member. So that's me.
Okay. You
That's
sounded
awesome.
so wise. I had assumed that you had a more education to it than you did, which means you did a lot
Nope.
of deep dives after, huh?
Yep. I just have some college. That's my highest level of education.
Oh,
That's okay.
we're equal then.
Yes.
Well, that's okay. Some college is useful and some college is not useful. I went through multiple college, so I know some college. Sometimes just getting some is better than getting all of it,
Mm.
because you don't always need all of it. Um, but we're here to discuss an unfortunate, huge issue that is now very, very prevalent in our lives, which is nationalist Christofascism.
Mm.
Um, which is really, really unfortunate because we thought we got rid of this type of mentality. The fascism part, the nationalism part has always been around. And the Christian part is separate. That's just used as a tool in my opinion. Um, but I have decided because there's so much of it going on, and we need to talk about the different people who are involved, such as Stephen Miller, who is not Christian, but is part of this group of fascists who are there. He's Jewish. We have J.D. Vance, who's a Catholic nationalist, so not a Christian nationalist, and doesn't fit quite in with a theonomy, because theonomy is strictly Christian and not Catholic. Um, and we have Bibi Netanyahu in Israel, who is also a Jewish fascist. I came up with the term I think is a little more encompassing because it also could include like Islamic fascists. Those aren't currently our threat right now, so I'm not talking about them. Is Abrahamic fascists.
Hmm. In the
And
end,
I
it's
want to get your opinion on it because a lot of them are very Abrahamic in nature and they
mhm,
just want the Old Testament side of it.
which
Mm.
fits in with all of the other religious extremists, which is where it really goes into, as far as I'm concerned, is religious extremism is part of what's doing this. How do you feel about that, Tim?
Yeah, I never thought of that term before. I mean, it
Oh,
definitely sounds like it makes sense to me. I don't know if most people understand the reference.
Yeah.
right.
I have found that for sake of simplicity, Christian nationalism has been helpful, Christian supremacy has been helpful, but even that can be a little too broad, right? Because of what
Mhm.
Yeah.
kind of Christian we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, so to speak.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to figure it out because I like words. Words have a lot of meaning, and if we use the right ones, they are really impactful. Like when people hear the Holocaust, which is no longer the Holocaust, it is just a Holocaust because
Mhm.
Israel is committing a Holocaust on Palestine right now. I don't know what else you can consider gathering people into places, lying to them, telling them to go to a place that's safe, and then bombing them with what huge, just hugely destructive weaponry that lights people on fire when the bomb goes off. Like I don't know what else to call it.
Right.
Is and I talked with Qasim Rashid Esquire about that, and he said it's a Holocaust, and Lawrence and I were talking, and I'm deconstructing like what it means to be Jewish in a time of Jewish fascism. Um, and so I'm trying to figure out a way to describe it so we can all come together and speak about it in a way that
Mm.
we're not using the same rhetoric of the past. Kamala was right. We need to let go of the burdens of the past. We need to unburden ourselves from the past. We don't need to not unlearn from it, but we need to maybe make better words for it. Um, and I think you're right that maybe Abrahamic is not the right word, because those of us who've studied it enough to understand what it is aren't the majority of folks. Um, but I think we're using the wrong words. So what do you think about that in terms of like describing Christian nationalism, approaching this actual current threat that we're under, because it's no longer an artificial one, it's a current one. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Who?
You, Tim.
Oh,
I'll go for you
sorry.
first.
I'm just here to keep adding more questions.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of scholarship done on the term Christian nationalism, and it is a big term because it encompasses a lot. It's like the term evangelical. That's a massive word that holds a lot of inside of it. One thing about the Christian nationalism, though, is that it does encompass like Zionism, so it's
Yeah.
kind of in that bubble,
Yeah.
especially evangelical Zionism, but I try and stay in my lane. Like when it comes to Jewish Zionism, that's not really my forte. I could just speak to the Christian side of kind of what has gotten us to this point, the prophetic and the inherently anti-Semitic view that many evangelicals have about the end times. The fact that once everything happens with Israel, then God will burn most of the Jewish people, or they'll repent and become Christian. Like incredibly anti-Semitic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I have found, for sake of simplicity, and I think this is actually what the right wing is really good at doing, is they, for worse, more than better,
Yeah.
tend to make one or two words that catch all for so many things, maybe to their detriment, but on like a mass messaging scale, it's really effective.
Right.
Like the term woke, how they completely appropriated that from Black culture, and I've essentially redefined it to mean something undefinable. What is
Right.
woke? It's almost like a gut feeling now. It's not even an actual definition. So I certainly don't think there's a wrong or right way to refer to this stuff. Matthew Taylor likes to use the term Christian supremacy more than Christian nationalism. I like to use the term Christian fascism. So I think it's a little more rooted in some kind of movement or ideology. But I think that for me, anything with that kind of flavor is fair game.
Okay. Yeah. I want to make sure, like you said, the right is really good about simplifying things down, boiling it down to the most simple common denominator of words, bringing it to like a third grade level and going, here's what we're telling you.
Yeah.
And here's how we're going to lie to you about it. Is how I always get, like, that's how I always feel when I come away from like a Christian, not a Christian, but a right wing talking point, a fascist talking point, is that I'm being lied to and gaslit into this. From your experience, from knowing folks, so those who don't know, and if it's okay, are you okay to talk about what happened last week, Tim, before I ask any questions?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So Tim knew Charlie Kirk, and had met him before. Tim, you've attended and have always attended the Turning Point conferences, as a true faith actor, going there to learn, debate, talk with, and understand. And you've met Charlie before. And I'm going to use my words carefully here because I'm not trying to be mean or rude. Charlie was not a good person in terms of his words and his speech. He used his speech for really derisive points. And he did not deserve to be shot.
Yep.
Can you give any thoughts that you have on, as someone who is more faithful than I, has more spirituality than I do? How are you approaching this and like bringing comfort to not only yourself, but those around you who do need it right now?
I mean, it's a complicated thing, right? The last time I spoke to Charlie was at the DNC. We spoke for a few minutes. He asked me who I was voting for, kind of, as a little bit of a jab. I said, of course, I'm going to vote for Harris. And I think we went and shook hands, and we went our separate ways. And I made eye contact with him at the last America Fest. We nodded at each other, but we never spoke. And that was it. That was the last time I really interacted with him directly. I know several people on staff at Turning Point USA. That's why I'm allowed to go to these events, because I know that I'm there in
Mhm.
good faith. So I kind of leverage that connection, that I'm out there to do gotcha moments. I'm there to really understand and report
Right.
accurately on my findings. And I don't hold back, by the way. I mean, my YouTube videos are very clear about where I stand on these issues. So it's not like I'm trying to, downplay the realities. In fact, I think I am quite blunt. But yeah, I mean, look, for me as a follower of Jesus, someone who teaches his followers to love their enemies,
Right.
someone who bore a cross for his enemies, and someone who challenged us to think about how do we love the people that we really find unlovable, right? It's not hard for me to say that what happened to Charlie was completely unjustifiable, like, period. And by the way, although motive is still largely unknown, we have different hints. I don't care what the motive is. It's still wrong. I don't care if this guy was
Yeah.
leftist or a groiper. I don't give a shit. Like, it shouldn't have happened. And also,
Right.
pragmatically, it made things infinitely worse,
Right.
mostly for our most marginalized neighbors. I think that's what
Right.
I would challenge some of my more maybe left wing white people who might be gleefully happy about this, is that you just made it infinitely worse for our black neighbors. Because black neighbors, queer neighbors, our minority neighbors always face the brunt of the
Right.
backlash of empire, not the
Yeah.
white people. They're very low on the hierarchy here. And so
Mhm.
this is just a bad situation all around. It makes things incredibly more volatile. Obviously, our president isn't going to do a damn thing to try and lower the temperature. They're going to do what authoritarians do. They're going to use it as a justification for more and more power, which we can talk about. But look, I don't believe that this is a binary situation. Both things can be
Yeah.
true at the same time. What happened to
Right.
Charlie was terrible. His
Yeah.
wife will be tucking in their kids without him for the rest of her life. That's horrific, right? I mean, I'm a parent. I'm assuming
Yeah.
you all are as well, and I don't wish that on anyone. And
Mm.
also, his legacy speaks for itself. His legacy was divisive. His legacy did not love, I think, the most vulnerable in society. His
Mm.
legacy really benefited his own privilege and power at the expense of the other. He was worth
Right.
$12 million, built a massive organization on the back of billionaire money, and convinced many white evangelicals and Christians that somehow he was a bold truth teller, when in reality, he just punched down most of the time and spread
Yeah.
things that really weren't fully true. He wasn't telling
Right.
the truth. And so I wrestled with that tension internally. I've had my own time to kind of mourn the feeling of what I saw and how he died, and also being honest about his legacy as well.
Can I have a dumb
Yeah.
question in here?
No
Do
dumb
you believe
questions.
do you believe he actually believed everything he said?
I
Because
do.
one of the things that I kinda hold in my own thoughts here is, gee whiz, there were things I believed that I don't believe now. Like you said at one point you were anti-LGBTQ. Um, I I realized in my early 20s that I only looked at women, but I also knew that my religion said I could only marry a man, that I had to marry a man because patriarchy required that have a man tell me what to do. I mean, complementarianism doesn't tell you to stay single as a woman. It's not there at all. Women must find their male head and be under it. So I did the marriage thing and I was an obedient wife. But when I finally ended up with a man who really loved me, I realized I was lying to the poor guy.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden that seemed just as hypocritical as anything else to me. And so do you think he believed everything he spoke?
Yes, because
Okay, that's
unlike
what
in
I
your
was.
I was gonna say, unlike in your situation where you had to repress part of yourself and lie, right?
Mhm.
Charlie is being honest about what he believes and making a lot of money and a lot of fame and a lot of power. And don't forget,
Right.
in the world of Christian nationalism, you look for success as a sign that God's approving of what you're
Correct.
doing. So
I've
be
said that to
very
several people.
right. So it'd be very easy for Charlie to look around and say, wow, I'm only 30, 31 years old. I built a huge organization. I have the president's number on speed dial. Clearly, God is blessing me for doing this work
Right.
this way. I'm all in. So I think absolutely he believed it for sure. I don't think it was a grift.
Yeah. Which
That's
in
that's unfortunate, I think. Makes it more unfortunate because he was sold a lie that he ended up believing the lie itself. And I mean, it's unfortunate, not it's unfortunate for people in general. Like I mean, it's a brainwashing technique to make them believe a lie. And it manipulates, unfortunately, most often the most vulnerable of us is who are the targets of that manipulation.
Yeah.
And I find it no coincidence that groups like Turning Point do target young men in college, or college
when you're
age.
developing your adult persona.
Yeah, and it's really the first time you're free of your parents, where you've lived through their ideology and their teachings and their nurture and growth as a kid, but you're really on your own for the first time, and nobody gets to tell you not to do your worst inhibitions.
Mhm.
And they're vulnerable, yeah, and they're fed a lie. Can you talk about, or do you think that feeds into the culture of why maybe they went to colleges, or why they were using colleges as a place to sort of recruit from?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think that people know that, when you're at that age, you think you're not impressionable, but you actually really are, right? You think that you have it all figured out. And I say this as someone who was once that age, right? You think you
Yeah,
understand it
exactly.
all. And then you look back and you're like, yeah, I was kind of ignorant, and really I was really impressionable. And I think that Charlie wanted to reach the youth. I mean, this is all groups do this, right? It's not
Yeah,
just a Christian thing. Youth is important. It's a formative time in your life that really shapes how you see the world. So I think that was definitely, I mean, look, the whole organization was based on that. The college
Yeah,
movement, Turning Point was based on the college movement. It wasn't based on
right.
anything else initially. So I think that was a huge point. I think that Charlie and the people who backed him believed that modern colleges were indoctrination centers of the left,
Mm-hmm.
and that they had to go to campus and speak truth to power and debate. Now, I would argue that they were never really debating. Charlie just used certain debate tactics
Correct.
to not be a good faith actor. He always had a straw man or some kind of stat that was kind of have truth and have not, that he was
Mm-hmm.
able to employ. It wasn't about going to learn, right? Or going to
It
like
was
try and understand, different
right.
perspectives. But, again,
It was rhetoric, not
yeah,
debate.
exactly. Yeah, and also, I mean, it was also a lot of clip farming. Like Turning Point was
Yeah.
really good at grabbing the clips where Charlie owned some college kid
Mm-hmm.
and making it go viral online, which I do think, I mean, even that idea, Charlie is 30, 31, he's debating 18-year-olds. For
Yeah.
Charlie as a professional does this, right? This is my issue with Ben Shapiro too. It's like, why don't you debate the professors? Like, you should go to college campuses and debate the professors on these topics that they're experts in if you want a real fair debate, right? Instead of debating the freshman year college student who has taken 4 weeks of sociology and thinks that he's somehow an expert on something.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It was
I
meant
think,
for gotcha moments. It really
yeah,
was.
yeah, it's that griftman. It's the grift idea of the right, or of just this cult, or of not even the right. Well,
Well,
yes, mostly the right,
okay.
but it's a grift idea. Is
It
everything's a grift to them?
well, as was already pointed out, he could actually do it in good faith. The especially prosperity gospel. He decides he wants to go and encourage these children to go to a Christian worldview. And he starts this TPUSA and gets all these donors and gets all these people to encourage people to vote for principles that are against their own, you know, their own benefit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, cri- conservatism allied with part of Christianity on purpose. And that's to make people vote against their own self-interest in the interest of greater society.
Yeah, the term is called the conservative dilemma, and it's how do you convince a bunch of people to vote against their own economic interests, right? And
Right?
there's a whole world of thought behind that. You look at the 80s, even before that, the book
Yeah. Moral
uh
majority in 70s.
yeah, there's a book by Kevin M. Cruz called, what's it called? It's really good on this, but I'm blanking on the name, but look up the name Kevin Cruz and the book will come up. But yeah, I mean, look, Turning Point, here's the interesting thing. Charlie was pretty libertarian initially.
Yeah.
Turning Point USA did not start out as some Christian nationalist like think
In fact,
tank.
it didn't even do the Christian thing at first, did
One
it?
nation under God.
Um, what was that?
One nation under God. Kevin Cruz.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, Charlie was more libertarian, didn't really talk about his faith. It wasn't until Rob McCoy, his pastor, and also COVID, I think, was a huge shift. That was when I think Charlie really got a little more like, oh yeah, I have to speak about my faith more. Oh, this COVID thing is shutting down the churches. That was a huge radicalization moment for a lot of these Christian nationalists. They really felt like they were under attack because their
Right.
mass gatherings were temporarily shut down during a pandemic. But that really is the beginning, in my opinion, of a huge shift for Charlie and for Turning Point USA as far as how they think about politics, how they talk about politics, etc.
For Turning Point, and because I know you've been there and you've been in the room,
Mhm.
per se. Um, how did Turning Point fit into, or in how would Turning Point fit into the overall like Seven Mountain Mandate or Dominionism in general? Or is that separate from what Charlie was doing?
No, I mean, Lance Wallnau, the architect of the Seven Mountain Mandate, had
Mhm.
a main stage speaking slot at last year's America Fest. I mean, he spoke there for their church night. So Turning Point has a couple different wings to it. There's Turning Point USA, that's like the mothership. There's
Mhm.
Turning Point Academy. There's Turning Point Action, that's their 501c4. Then there's Turning Point Faith. That's their faith wing. And that is a very, in their mind, ecumenical thing, meaning in the evangelical world, they're always fighting over charismatic theology,
Correct.
reformed theology, women in leadership, whatever. They were like, let's forget all that. Let's just work together. And they were effective in it. They had Doug
Mhm.
Wilson alongside people like Jensen Franklin, who's not at all theologically aligned with Doug Wilson. And so Lance Wallnau was someone who was very frequently popular, was a popular speaker at Turning Point USA events, including last year. So for Charlie, I think, and Rob McCoy is more in the charismatic world too, I would say, than not. I think the Seven Mountain Mandate fit perfectly into this.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Yeah, and one of the mandates is education.
Uh-huh.
And so
Exactly.
this is a huge piece of it, is changing the educational system or convincing people that higher education is a left-wing crock or indoctrination center compared to not considering anything else indoctrination centers, like churches could be used as indoctrination centers or Bible studies or your midday or midweek groups, like any of those things where your kids are going to summer Bible camp. Any of that stuff could be turned into indoctrination. Um, and do you see that fitting into the overall education, or is there something else more that Turning Point is aimed at that you know of from like the mandates side?
Well, I mean, Turning Point was look, the attack on public education goes way back.
Mhm.
One person is R.J. Rush Jr. He wrote a lot about this in the 60s and 70s about how
It did.
the public school system was like a modern indoctrination setup for Marxism. So the war on education is a long tried and true playbook. It really takes off in the moral majority, the homeschool movement. Which, by the way,
Mhm.
the original homeschool pioneer was actually a Marxist who believes that public schools were too oppressive and that kids should be able to live and actually have experience. And then that kind of evolved and got co-opted by these evangelicals who believed that the
Right.
government was incredibly hostile to them as it was integrating the races. So if you actually look at Brown v. Board of Education being enacted, you will see a huge rise in
Yep.
private schooling and in homeschooling. You will, and because they weren't policed the same way, you could have an all-white school. So the war on education is not a new thing, and Turning Point is just one
No, it
cog in
isn't.
the machine, working alongside folks like Doug Wilson and many others, who, forming what's called a classical Christian education. But yeah, I mean, there's Betsy DeVos as another one. These folks want they want the Department of Education dismantled. That was something in Project 2025. It all
Mhm.
it all works together.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it does. And Linda McMahon, who's currently sitting at top of the Department of Education and thinks that AI is A1, and doesn't know what she's doing other than dismantling it and all the protections to allow for
Right.
more homeschooling, more private schooling,
Exactly.
more public choice. Like we've been sold on this public choice option for
Yep.
schools and sending your kids to a different district. other than it being capitalized on, what is, I want to phrase this in a way that isn't isn't actually, I want to phrase this in the correct way. Who do you think in all of this, because Charlie's gone and there's now a void where his voice was in Turning Point USA. We saw JD Vance appear on his podcast last night, which I think was wholly inappropriate for a vice president to
Shocking.
do, to
Shocking.
nationalize a private citizens podcast after they died, to inflame um, tensions and call for restricting free speech and constitutional rights against people on the left. Who do you think is going to fill this void, or is someone able to fill the void that Charlie was in? Because he was a very influential figure and had a very good way with words
Yeah, he's a
in his own
great
ways.
communicator, right? Great communicator, knew how to say things a certain way. Very motivated, very smart. I'm 100%. I mean, two things. First off, if if Hassan Piker was assassinated during during Biden's presidency, and Harris filled in for Hassan Piker's podcast, imagine, imagine how right wing would be talking about it right now. The
Mhm.
Mhm.
radical, Hassan was a radical. He was crazy, right? The fact that JD Vance did this is like unbelievable. I'm old enough to remember when Sean Hannity insisted that, CNN was like state run media because they were too favorable towards like Bill Clinton, right? And
Mhm.
now their dude is hosting someone's podcast from their official office headquarters, and like no one's batting an eye. Like, are you kidding me? It also shows, by the way, how influential Charlie and Turning Point was to this
Right.
administration. I think it's very telling. That being said, I don't know who will replace his voice. I'm not sure if anyone will in the way that Charlie has. I don't know with the behind the scenes, but it seems like from what I can tell, Charlie was a huge driver of the vision behind Turning Point USA still. He was in communication with his staff regularly. He was touring regularly. He was doing all kinds of stuff. As far as a voice, I don't know. My concern is that someone like Nick Fuentes might kind of fill the gap, and they might go farther to the right. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that Turning Point would ever hire Nick to replace Charlie. Don't
Yeah.
misunderstand. But as far as like where do people start looking for another voice, I think right into the hands of someone like a Nick Fuentes type.
Do you
Um,
think that Charlie's wife would be
can
able
I
to fill the void? Oh, yeah, go
can
ahead.
I read a question? No, I not as a female, I doubt it. But Tom Kudlow
That was
asks,
the answer I was
Tula.
expecting.
Tom says, does TPUSA faith include Christian, Jews, Muslims, or just Christian? When it goes ecumenical, did it go across all faiths? Or I was got figured it only go Christian, but I wasn't sure.
I mean, here's the thing. If they were able to find a Muslim who was all on board for the MAGA first agenda, they'd
Mhm.
probably take them in because they fit the agenda. If there
Right.
was a Jewish person, same thing. But no, they're really operating with and for like the white evangelical Catholic
Right.
kind of coalition, mostly evangelical in my opinion.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I did ask it in good faith because that is a name that is floated of who could possibly take the mantle of Turning Point, is Charlie's wife, Erica, right?
Mhm.
Um,
I
and
could see
I
her
just
running
never
it in the
believed it.
background, but
Yeah,
I don't see her being a speaker. Not with some
no.
array I mean, when the previous person was saying the best thing a woman could do is get an MRS degree, they don't want women telling them what to do.
Well, they
Yeah.
they will appreciate certain women, right? Alice Stuckey can do what she does. Riley Gaines can do it, but they're always limited.
Right.
Look, if Erica Kirk took over, I think it's plausible that would kind of be proof for them that look, they're pro women, right? We kind of shut up
Right.
the
That's
right, but it's
true.
always limited. But I don't know. I mean, those are decisions that I'm not even sure if they're thinking about it right now. I think that they're just trying to mourn, Charlie. His memorial service is this Sunday. I think it's at some stadium in Arizona.
It's a
So,
stadium, yeah.
yeah, I'm not really sure who would take over.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting space now and unfortunately interesting space because at least to Charlie there, you knew who you were getting. And you knew it wasn't someone more extreme like Nick Fuentes, who is what they call, or has created what they call the Groyper movement. If you do not know what a Groyper is, I would I would absolutely familiarize yourself with the term. I'm putting it in. It is a far right neo-Nazi who is much more extreme ideologically on the fascistic sides than Charlie Kirk was. Charlie
Yep.
Kirk, I don't know if Charlie was really a fascist. I know Charlie was a Christian nationalist from what he, at least his words felt were Christian nationalistic.
Right.
I don't know if I don't know if he was a fascist. I'm not going to answer that question. That's not the question we need. But he wasn't fascist enough. No matter what his viewpoints were, Nick Fuentes and the Groyper movement are. They're
Right.
much more fascistic. They are true neo-Nazis and Nazis. Um, so I think your assessment, though, is I don't think Fuentes could take over Turning Point because he's not religious enough to do it.
Well, he's quite Catholic, at least on the surface, but also he's been banned from Turning Point USA events for years. I mean, there's been a huge feud between well, I should backtrack that. There's been a Groyper war launched on like the Charlie Kirks of the world. I mean, they used to send Groypers into the Q&A to ask questions to make him sound more and more extreme. You know, it's kind of like a way to troll him. So Nick Fuentes has been banned from Turning Point USA events. I've known that for a long time. So certainly Turning Point as a whole is no fan of what Fuentes is doing, at least on the surface. And I do believe that, by the way, for many different reasons that I won't go into here. So I don't think he'll ever take over Turning Point or come within a mile of it, at least now. But it depends on who takes over. You know, if anyone,
Yeah.
they might just run it as an organization with no super public CEO or executive director, and just have that person behind the scenes operating in the way that it was without someone like Charlie at the helm.
Mm.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Almost more
That way.
unnerving without a leader, because then you don't actually know who's heading the direction and if all the movements are in alignment. Well, at least with alignment, you can trace where they might go.
Exactly.
But with decentralized little cells and networks, they become more unpredictable and chaotic,
Exactly.
which may be part of the point. So shifting a little bit away from Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, because you have just a wealth of knowledge in general around Christianity and things going on, but also in community building, and going against some of the things that are going on. And can you talk about some of the things that you are doing for community to help rebuild and shore up the community around you?
Digitally or in person?
Both. Either works. Let's start with in person.
Honestly, not much there. I'm kind of hurting. You know, it's I mean, I have some great friends around me, but they're not really tapped into this work the way that I am, so we don't really talk about it. It's a huge struggle. You know, a lot of people who are leaving behind their Christian fundamentalism tend to lose their church community in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of your sense of belonging, your sense of connectedness. And frankly, as a white person, when that's severed, you really feel like you're tied to nothing because whiteness erases even your own identity, right? I'm not in America. I'm not part Greek, part German, part Italian. I'm just white. And so, like, you know, there's this real problem, I think, of a lot of folks who either get kicked out or who leave like their spiritual communities for all kinds of reasons and don't know where to go or who they are because their entire identity as a person was shaped by this high control religious environment, you know?
Right.
So on the, and that goes for me too, as I'm still a human being on this side of the screen. I still have those desires. I lost my church and we haven't really found another one that I've felt at home yet. Luckily, like I said, we have some friends that are outside of that we're able to see and we feel connected. But that's what we do there. And, you know, as far as digital, it's tricky because look, the internet can be difficult, and I think we know, especially in progressive spaces, sometimes infighting's a real thing. Someone says the wrong thing the wrong way, and suddenly they're problematic, they're harmful, they're terrible, you know. And in some ways, I really get that, and certainly, I'm not condemning or condoning any kind of truly abusive behavior. But sometimes I feel like we could be a little bit on edge, or like anything, like you sneeze the wrong way, and oh my god, how could you, right? That being said, the organization that I founded, the New Evangelicals, we have our own app and our own community space called TNE Connect that is totally separate from the meta reach
Mm-hmm.
and from the algorithms of Instagram and TikTok. It's our own space completely. It's totally
Right.
free to join. We offer all kinds of resources. We offer things like Theology 101, which is usually led by an actual biblical scholar on how do we approach the Bible, active evangelicalism, what actually is the Bible, how do we address certain key issues. We do a book club. It has its own social media feed. People can chime in there. We have regional chats. So that's kind of what we've been doing to kind of build some sense of belonging digitally for people who really feel like, they are homeless, frankly.
I love that. I love the
Yeah.
the idea of digital bastions right now, because it can be really scary too.
Yeah.
And especially in times when the government is considering clamping down on and eliminating your First Amendment right to speak, or push back against the regime, or you then have the threat of being shot if your views are either not in alignment ideologically far enough, or you're just not in the group at all. It appears we're closing in on a point where people are shooting each other very openly and often. And we already at a point, but we're closing much more rapidly into a real, like, cannot come back from point of that. Is hate is on the rise, and we need to find our communities where we can. um and so I think it's awesome that you're doing that for digital communities to help rebuild, and find spaces for people, because especially even for folks like me is so let me ask this then. As someone who's non-religious, I would be considered agnostic, atheist agnostic at most. Like, I truly don't care. Like, if there is a God, cool, I have some questions. If there isn't a God, what's it going to matter to me? I'm dead. Like, it's like I'm dust to dust. I'm done. So is there a space in the community that you're building in the new evangelicals for folks like me who want to learn but don't want to feel evangelized to? I know that's sort of a contradiction when you say evangelical and evangelizing, but I don't want to be like gaslit, evangelized about religion and what it could mean. What are you doing in your community to help sort of maybe push back against those things and invite folks like me in?
Yeah, well, it's really about shared values over shared beliefs. That's what it comes down to. I have plenty of good friends. Andrew Seidel over at Americans United, for example, is an atheist. We talk all the time, and we're united over our shared beliefs, of human flourishing and the love of neighbor, even though we have vastly different ways of getting there. And I tell him often I'm praying for his true salvation one day. We joke about that. But when it comes to our space, it's the same thing. Like we don't really tolerate actual proselytizing. Like we don't want
Mm-hmm.
people, especially Christians, trying to convert other people, especially digitally. Like, what a waste of time and energy. It's not really about that. Being more progressive in my faith and kind of more open, I kind of lost the gotta save souls from hell shtick that evangelicalism convinces you of. I don't think ultimately it's even biblical, dare I use that phrase, or even like a healthy representation of a true Christian ethic or way of being. So yeah, you would absolutely be welcome in our group. Obviously, a lot of people are evangelical. You might not get all the references or the culture that people come from, but you're more than welcome to join. Our Theology 101 or our book club. We're going through Catherine Stewart's new book, Money, God and Lies, or Lies, God and Money, whatever it's called. It's all about all the deep pockets that fund this stuff, right? Absolutely. So people of non-faith are totally welcome as long as they can make room as well, But we do have some rules. For example, we're fully affirming and inclusive. So if someone comes in there and is like, homosexuality is sinful, and it ain't gonna fly.
Yeah,
So we obviously have rules and we have that kind of, those kinds of boundaries. But yes, truly anyone can join.
awesome. I love that. I love that you're teaching Christianity the way that Christ seems to have taught
Oh, Rebecca.
Christianity.
Rebecca is our board president of the New Evangelicals. She's
Awesome. Hi,
wonderful.
Rebecca.
And her and our executive director, Melinda Hale, are launching a new podcast called The Advocacy Hour. They're going to do it once a month.
Oh,
And
great.
yeah, Rebecca made a great point. A lot of people inside the group or who are part of our community are agnostic, or they're still wrestling through their faith. They're not sure what they believe.
Yeah.
They could be full atheists. They might not be. And again, we have a secret group for all those people that we pray over without them knowing, but I'm just but we have a lot of fun. And I will tell you this too. So we used to have a Facebook group of almost 10,000 people, and man, every now and then, like it would be this huge something would happen. Someone would get offended. It would just, everyone would start commenting. But since we moved to this, our own space completely that's off meta, and people can still, it still feels like a Facebook forum. You can make a post, people can comment. The temperature is just so low that like we just don't get any of that. Like, when people just go back and forth forever on like long paragraphs, and you're just like, oh my God, that doesn't really happen anymore, which is so refreshing. So the space is really nice and really quiet in all the right ways.
Awesome. And Rebecca, I just subbed to you. And if you'd be interested in connecting more, please feel free to reach out. And if it's okay, I may reach out to you too.
I recommend it. She's a powerhouse.
Okay, awesome.
She
Because
knows her shit.
I'm trying to, just like you, is trying to build digital community right now. We need space that we can all feel safe in and express views that are positive and express views of masculinity. Specifically for me, is how do we define masculinity when it's been corrupted and toxicified for generations? And deconstruct any of the trauma of the past. Like our friend Lawrence says, our duty on this earth is to undo the trauma of our previous generations or not pass on generational traumas. And I think it sounds like that's in line with what you're doing with the new evangelicals.
Yeah, we're trying. Look, I'm going to be, and Rebecca will tell you this too. You know, I struggle with digital community or that term because for me, community has to be embodied because if not, you can kind of create your own version of what you want people to see you to be. And then how do you handle conflict when something goes awry, right? In the digital space, it's so hard to do that. And so I'm not saying that that there certainly isn't a place to feel together and connected online, but I'm really passionate about people finding folks in their local area where they can get coffee or get a drink with and they can talk about this stuff over a fire, which is why we have those regional chats. Like we actually have chat groups and rooms for like the East Coast and for the Midwest, et cetera. And our space has built-in features where it will try and connect you with people either in your local area automatically by kind of nudging you that way, or you can look up by like common interests. And I think it's both and, but yeah, we definitely want to undo the generational trauma. Look, we're going to pass some on, right, to our next generation. I'm a parent, but like, I think the big difference is like, how do we stay accountable as much as we can? How do we be willing to acknowledge, like, yeah, I did kind of fuck that one up. Like, yeah, I could do better here, right? I think that will go a long way, hopefully, raising the next generation of future adults.
Yeah. No, and I want to make sure I qualify too, is like, I don't think we can undo all traumas that are passed on. And I don't think traumas are passed on either purposefully in a lot of times. A lot of traumas are accidental, that we pass on from parenting, from non-experience, from just life. And I like the idea though that you're trying to help show that it can be undone in ways, and like, but not holding yourself accountable if you can't undo all of it.
Right.
Leaving space for grace and forgiveness for yourself for not being able to complete, say, a mission that you set yourself on to undo. And it's the act that you were doing that mission is the journey, at least in my opinion. And I think that's for me that's why I'm agnostic, is it's the journey itself that matters. It's not the I only live once. It's I live every day. Like you live every day that you're awake. You live every day that you're alive, and you have to do it. I have to think like that because I've been on the verge of I've been suicidal before. Like it's you have to live like every day is worth living. And I'm glad we brought you on for this discussion today, and I'm glad we got to this part of it, about building community. I want to invite both of you to come on Friday for a show. Maybe not join in the video itself for the full time, but maybe. We got some seats. Is 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. No, sorry, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, noon 30 Eastern time, every Friday. Banner and Backbone has started hosting the Anti-Fascist Book Club. It's a virtual anti-fascist book club set up, organized by veterans fighting fascism, through Chris Goldsmith's work. And it's a set of books and articles that he has put together to help discuss and learn about in real time and fight back against fascism and go on the offense, not attack, but go on the offense. And that's one of the big things he talks about is obviously peaceful, patriotic. Offense is very different. Says we don't have to be defensive. We can take the offense against fascism. And I want to invite both of you guys to join us, to be a part of that. I think you'd both enjoy it a lot, but also you'd get a lot of, I think we're trying to work on building community out of it, both virtual and in person. Is Melissa Corrigan has started, which Tim, you met with when you met her last week. She is doing two anti-fascist book clubs in person in her area. And one of the things she's learning how to do is how to communicate safely in the time of fascism. And I think that's a lesson maybe we could all bring back to our communities. And so, but also looking for local community and how you can make some is the encouraged idea is go to your library, is meet your librarian, because they're probably the biggest anti-fascist you know, and you don't even know it. And learn how to run your own anti-fascist book club each week and build a community there too. I know you said you didn't have a church locally yourself. Is this something that you think, this type of thing where you're learning about how to protect your communities or shore up your faith systems without intermingling them with government systems? Because I would be in the impression that you believe there is a separation of church and state. And do you think it would be an appropriate venue to use progressive churches, or not progressive churches, but churches who hold dignity and human sanctity as a core value? Do you think they would be appropriate places to have discussions and say maybe in-person book clubs for safety for some folks, compared to a library if they had that option?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the church in Germany. You know, some of the church was totally co-opted by Hitler. Some of it was not. It was part of the resistance, right? Even now, during ICE raids, a lot of churches are taking in immigrants and teaching people how to resist ICE, right? Look, I understand, and this is why I never call it out. I understand why some people are online saying, fuck Christianity. Christianity is shit. It's horrible. I understand. I do. However, there are really beautiful parts of Christianity that have a long tradition of resistance. I mean, the Black Liberation Church, comes out of race-based chattel slavery, comes out of Jim Crow segregation and lynchings, comes out of, a whole way of being when other Christians were really going hard after Black folks in a very dehumanizing way, right? So, yeah, I mean, the idea of like hush harbors almost, is a very Christian idea for sure. So I think that we absolutely need to partner with the church anywhere that will want to help create safer spaces and educate their population on what the hell is going on and how we resist it in non-violent ways, right? Because that's always the key. And that's the key for most people, but especially for Christians, we follow a non-violent Jesus who was crucified by empire. So we have to keep that in mind as we navigate this and find the tension, the balance between advocating for our neighbor, resisting oppression, but doing it in a way that also invites even our enemies to repent and join us in a better path forward. And that's a really important piece here, I think, right? We don't believe in killing our enemies. That's why we can all say on this call that we deplore what happened to Charlie Kirk. We don't believe in erasing our enemies. We don't believe in more bloodshed. So what do? Right? Because Ali Sucky is still here. Matt Walsh is still here. People who listen to those people are still here. Well, I think that instead of destroying supremacy, we compost supremacy. How do we turn supremacy into fertile soil where things can grow and bloom, right? And we do that
Right.
by inviting people, maybe not Matt Walsh, I'm not sure if he ever will, but we do it by inviting our neighbors into better ways of existing, of
Hmm.
community and inclusion and in human flourishing, hoping that maybe they can learn a different way of seeing the world where their neighbor is not the other, but maybe the neighbor is their neighbor, and maybe they can learn something from them and vice versa. So I think that that's the kind of path that we have to help carve. And
Right.
I think that's the only real way to resist true fascism long term.
Hmm.
I love that.
Um.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. I was going to bring up that in the end, whenever I was sitting in pews way back when they started teaching that the Old Testament law was the best law because God wrote it for us, etc., I can remember thinking to myself, if they really want people to show up in the doors, if they feed the hungry people and they reach out to the hurting people and they live Jesus to other people, they will get new converts. If they make it a law that you have to behave like a Christian, they're going to alienate more people than they ever get in the door. And it's so funny because you look at the rapid growth of the church in the first century, and it was because they were singing hymns as they were eaten by lions. It wasn't because they took over Rome and made Rome Christian the day that they started, you
Yep.
know.
Every time the church gets in bed with empire, it ends up becoming empire.
Right.
And this
Just
is
the way it
this is a
is.
common theme in scripture, even with the Israelites in the Hebrew Bible, right?
Yeah.
Like they are liberated from slavery, and then soon afterwards, or a couple generations later, they become empire and are now enslaving other people, right? And this is a
Hmm.
human thing. I think this is a human condition.
It is.
Yeah.
I think the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures are describing a very common human condition that we all can do, whether
Right.
it's the nation state of Israel, right? Like the Holocaust happened not even 100 years ago, horrific, horrible situation. And
Right.
now all of a sudden the shoe's on the other foot, right? And
Hmm.
same thing with Christianity. So I think the question is, how do we resist that very human impulse? For us to want to dominate and domineer over other people, and how do we instead work together for the sake of all of our neighbors that finds human flourishing, including finding the balance between my rights and your rights and our
Right.
preferences versus your preferences.
Exactly.
It's not easy work. Don't misunderstand.
Mm.
Let's not romanticize it, right? And if the three
Yeah.
of us spend a week in a cabin, and it's not going to be very long before we're like, you're kind of annoying the hell out of me right now. I need some space. So the question is, how do you navigate the tensions, right? That's the question, not how do you avoid them.
Right.
I love that.
And a really easy thing to start with is my rights end it before your nose. I cannot
Right.
touch you, I cannot hurt you, I cannot take from you. I can give to you, but I have no right to control your life. And to me, that seems like the easiest place to start.
Mm.
Is
Yeah.
human autonomy.
Yeah.
Well, it's the idea of guaranteeing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Is your happiness cannot infringe on other people's happinesses in a
Right.
negative way.
Right.
That's not happiness, that's hate. Like they are polar opposites in this context. Um, so Tim, this has been an amazing discussion today, and I want to respect your time. We're getting at the top of the hour here.
Yep.
And it's a Tuesday afternoon, so people got other things to do this afternoon, such as go to the FAFO50.com, register for the event that's going on tonight for the California redistricting effort, for Prop 50, to do the people powered movement for helping save democracy. Like help California out, guys. Like let's go to this FAFO50.com to register. The Find Out podcast guys are helping organize it with Brian Tyler Cohen, and Gavin Newsom, and others. And so it's going to be really important. But Tim, shamelessly plug yourself, and your other your podcast and what you do so people can find you. I'm going to drop the links again into the chat so they're easily visible too.
Sure. Well, I am on Substack at Tim Whitaker Speaks, and shameless plug, I am 2 subs away from hitting my first 100 subscribers. So if anyone is willing to become a paid subscriber, it'd be awesome. And I do the New Evangelicals podcast every week. I also do a podcast with my friend April LaJoy called the Tim and April Show. We go live every Thursday on YouTube, and coming soon to Substack, we will be restreamed by Lincoln Square Media as well every Thursday. So that's happening in about
awesome.
a week from now. So you can catch us there. And you can also check out the New Evangelicals. You can find us on Instagram, on Substack, thenewevangelicals.com. I mean, we have so many free resources. Everything we do is paywall free. We totally rely as a nonprofit on the generosity of the community. That's how we function. So, and you can find me on Instagram as well, at Tim Whitaker Speaks.
That is awesome. Tim, I'm so excited, and congratulations on working with Lincoln Square. That's awesome. They are fantastic. I interviewed Evan Fields earlier today. Super nice guy, great network, great group of people. Highly recommend following them as well. And shameless plug for both Lisa and I as well is please come subscribe if you haven't already to both of our networks. Become paid subscribers for all of us. Become a paid subscriber for Tim. Get him over that 100 mark. Get him that check mark, that bestseller check mark, because it really does
Those are
help.
nice to have.
It boosts him in the algorithm. It makes his profile easier to find. It makes his stuff more visible. And the stuff that he's writing and doing is really important.
It is.
And he's putting out really good, meaningful content that we can all benefit from. So I cannot recommend Tim highly enough. Lucky for y'all, we get to see him again on Thursday too. So it's
Maybe
the
I'll
Tim
talk
and
more
Tim
this
week.
time.
Yeah, I'll sit back and just and this will be the Lisa and Tim one, and I'll just hang around and ask probing questions.
Okay,
Love it.
that's great.
So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
I appreciate you all. Almost 200 of you being here in the chat today. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I cannot wait to see you both on Thursday again.
See ya.
Have a great day.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye-bye.